She thinks that I'm some wounded dog. No offense, bud. Argos! I got a wife and a kid. They're in danger. You didn't turn the oven off?
I never turn it on.
What is it?
Someone's trying to kill my husband.
He's not going anywhere.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thanks very much for taking the time to speak to me. Congratulations on the second Muzzle. It's fantastic. I loved it to bits.
Good, good. Thank you.
So I mean, the first obvious question is, this is a sequel. What particular itch were you did you feel needed scratching at the end of the first film, or was there something in the script of this second one that you that really enticed you to come on board for the second sequel to play Jake again?
Well, I like the character. I like his complexity. I like the fact that he's having to work through these mental problems. You know, these struggles that he's having, trying to adjust to traditional life. You know, going out there and this is a guy that meets a problem with overwhelming force, and that's not always justified, but it's not always protocol. And then trying to get a relationship and trying to work out these problems of, with his psychiatrist. These are all very attractive things for actors,
Yeah.
And it's continued into the second one, so I wanted to do that.
Uh-huh. And I love that you bring that up, because one of my questions was specifically about that, because I know that John was quite fed up of kind of the sanitized protagonist that we get to see in Hollywood of late, and he kind of really wanted to create this character that was kind of judged, and he wasn't courting the audience for approval in any way. So I'm quite curious how you approached that as an actor. Was that kind of liberating for you, or did you kind of that kind of precarious thing quite tricky, or is it quite a kind of an enjoyable challenge for you?
Yeah, I don't think that way. I don't, it's interesting because I'm going to go off and do another movie, and the director was talking about the word likable.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know what that means. I can't play likable. I don't know what it means as an actor. All I know is, everybody's worried about your hero being liked. Well, look at the biggest anti-heroes in film history, cinematic history. They were tough guys, unapologetic, without remorse. They were, laconic. Clint Eastwood, Steve McQueen, these guys. And all throughout, what we have now, Russell Crowe, so I don't really deal with that kind of language, those words. I say, what does the script want me to do? What's the author's intent, and how can I do it to the best of my ability? The idea of the challenge of being likable is not something I deal with. I go, how can I be as real as I possibly can? Mm-hmm. That's all I really care about. How can I be real under these imaginary circumstances? How do I serve the story? And I think people actually get, because if you go back to my very first movie, which is In the Company of Men, that guy was absolutely unlikable in every respect in the film, okay? Yet people loved him.
Yeah.
Women loved him, men loved him. They loved the guy. People would come up to me and whisper to me and go, everybody hates I hate your character and everything. You were great. I love your,
I love to hate
women. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I threw likability out way long ago. I think what the audiences love is this idea of an unrelenting mindset. The idea that this guy is so entrenched in his ideology that he will do anything to accomplish it. Look at, I don't even know what examples that are, but any bad guy that we love, or any hero that we love, is just unrelenting in his vision of the world. And that's what I try to give people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I imagine you approached the same mindset when it came to kind of the PTSD that he's going through, because it's very easy for a film to collapse into kind of genre abstraction, which this doesn't do, which I really appreciated. I imagine that's something that you talked a lot with John about, no?
Yeah, well, the idea of not being a victim is not seeing yourself as a victim, And I think that's an important, because that's when you start going down under the water. You want to stay above the water and let the audience know what's going on in your head, but not having the audience, not asking for the audience to feel sorry for you. I think it's a very important note. Um, and because you have to go, your job is to fly through this movie. It's like you said, it bangs. It's got to go from one thing to the next, and you have to take the audience with you. The idea of pain management, both physical and spiritual and emotional pain, especially with your loved ones. I think John did it really well with my wife in this movie.
Yeah.
This idea of questioning a relationship. Am I man enough to do this? Do you really love me? Do you think that I can do it? Are you going to support me? Because I've never had any support. And I have these feelings of being inadequate, but also maybe overzealous, and the idea of everybody calling me violent, and yet here I am in a loving relationship. And I think that's exciting juxtaposition for the audience to have a violent character in his job and his outlook of life, but then trying to be very tender with his wife and his child.
Yeah, no, I really appreciated the fact with Mia's character. It kind of really shows how much of that kind of trauma is shared between the two of you, and how she's kind of like this life preserve for you at certain moments,
Yeah.
and it just and I'm sure it's going to open a lot of debates actually when they walk out the movie.
Yeah, and the dog, by the way, in the first film, I talked to the dog, which I love. I think it's a great, um, uh, visual. But I think also the dog becomes the psychiatrist.
Right.
He's the ear, he's the shoulder that you lean on, he's the warm thing that's sitting by you. It's interesting because it wasn't necessarily the wife in the film. It was the dog that is, I
Emotional
just said it
support,
to
yeah.
somebody else, but it's an interesting point, which is you're talking to the dog about the wife,
Yeah.
you know. Because usually in a relationship, you talk about your wife of all these problems, what's going on, and that in this it's funny because he's talking to the dog about the wives
No, but does that
and
mean there's a lot of
listen.
people that do go home and their dog listens to whatever they've got, and the wife doesn't
Yes.
want to listen to it? So, but I just think it's really good that the wife here really does listen, and it kind of it teaches
Yes.
people that they can share these things, even though it is difficult for the other half or the loved
It's
ones
an
to go
interesting
through
it's
it.
an interesting point because a lot of people say, don't tell anybody anything, because they'll use it against you, in the end. And it's a very interesting dynamic, people's views on that particular subject, how much you let other people know.
Absolutely. We can't not talk about the dog, obviously. Working with the dogs again. I'm really curious. I mean, it's because your job as a handler, a dog handler, that kind of binds your identity in the film. So I'm quite curious how you work with the dogs to kind of create this lived-in kind of relationship with them, so it doesn't feel. I mean, obviously it does feel sentimental, but it doesn't feel overly sentimental. It feels really lived in, like you've really lived with these dogs. How do you work with the dogs to kind of build that
I
lived in
You have
feeling?
to work with the wranglers. That's the real obstacle in this, is getting to the wranglers and saying, listen, which I did right away. I had a conversation with the wranglers before I even saw the dog, which was, I have to have ownership of these dogs. This has to be my dog. And there were two dogs, and I said, nobody feeds them, nobody touches them, nobody goo goo gagas them. They're my dogs. And so when I'm on set, I would go to the cages and hang out with the dogs. I would have the dog with me all the time. And I wouldn't do that. I didn't, as I say, goo goo gaga the dog. I treated the dog as my partner,
Mhm.
who was a lifesaver, and I treat him with respect. I played with him. I mentally challenged him all the time. I made him, because these dogs are smart. I made that dog think, look to me for his next move. I had to do that right away.
Yeah. And did you find,
Nobody
sorry
gave,
to interrupt you, but did you find also that he had you
he did it.
kind of on the spot as well, on your toes, playing with him and acting as well when you
Oh
actually
yeah.
filming?
No,
Yeah.
listen. For example, when I'm giving the dog a command to get into the truck, that's not written. That's not everything. Usually a wrangler would be behind the truck. I go, whatever I said, whatever the German command for it was, I said, I think it was Foss. I said, we're doing the scene, and we're having to, I go, Foss. As soon as I did that, that dog jumped in that truck. That's gold.
Yeah.
We had to earn that in the sense that I had to be able, that dog had to listen to me, and he did it because I was with him all the time. And then all of a sudden, which is interesting, is the role of the wrangler becomes something else, and I think that's when you really are getting to the magic, which is the dog's not looking to the wrangler for his next command. He's looking to me, and that's where the movie and the audience really gets rewarded. Now, it's difficult because everybody, the whole crew, every single day, they're bored, they're doing their jobs, and they're looking at these most beautiful dogs, and they just want to come up and go, oh, But as soon as that happens, you're like, no.
It's fine.
You can't do it. So you feel bad.
I love the kind of the three-way relationship. You said that the dog kind of responds to you, and he's kind of looking up to you to see what he has to do. But at the same time, you're kind of looking at your wife at the same time with that same kind of relationship. So there's a kind of a triangle going on that was really interesting. Yeah. Yeah,
that's very true. And then you have to look at her relationship with the dog. How is she? Does the dog respect her commands? Does she have a relationship? Does she know how to talk to the dogs? Does she feel threatened by the dogs? And then you have the kid, of course. But you're very right. And this idea that, and that's why I brought up the point of I'm talking to the dog about my wife, because then you have to say, is the wife going to stick around?
Yeah.
The dog, we know the dog's sticking around.
It's going to be there, yeah, no matter what, yeah.
But is the wife going to stick around? Which is an interesting dynamic. Because with the dog, your role. You got to feed him, you got to run him, you got to pick up after him, blah, blah, blah. And he's your partner. And he's going to do that. And every single day, you guys are going to do that. So we have our structure. With the wife, it's completely different. Yeah. She has opinions. She wants to do things. She gets mad at me. All these things. And I think for Jake, that's where everything breaks down because he doesn't know how to deal with it. With a dog, I know exactly what's going to happen. With her, it's a crapshoot. I think the movie does a pretty good job, even though that's not the number one story. It does a good job of sort of introducing that. Mm-hmm. And in the first one too.
Sorry.
So go ahead.
Aaron, so no, I'll be giving a wrap. So I've got to jump. So it's been a real pleasure to speak to you. Like I said, the film's great. I can't wait for people to see it. And talking of sticking around, I hope we get to see a third one because there's certainly some kind of idea that there could be a third one there. Yeah. Yeah,
I think so.
All right.
Maybe.
All the very best with the release. Hope to speak to you again sometime soon. Take care.
Okay.
Cheers now.
Hello, darkness. How you doing? Good boy. Good boy. I got that darkness in me. Listen.
We're not supposed to have animals in here.
Inside.